In this video, we are going to understand how to use the graphical method for linear programming problems when the constraints are having negative sign. So here question is, we have to minimize z is equal to minus x1 plus 2x2 subjected to constraints. First constraint minus x1 plus 3x2 less than or equal to 10, x1 plus x2 less than or equal to 6, x1 minus x2 less than or equal to 2, here x1 and x2 is greater than or equal to 0. Now we will first find out points which we have to plot and on x-axis as well as on y-axis. That's why we have to prepare here one table. So first column is constraint. So for this table we have to cancel this less than sign and we will consider only is equal to sign. So this is limited to this table only. So I will write here x1, that is minus x1 plus 3x2 is equal to 10, x1 plus x2 is equal to 6, x1 minus x2 is equal to 2, and here x1 comma x2 is greater than 0. So we have, these are the conditions, that is x1 is greater than or equal to 0, x2 is greater than or equal to 0. Now we will find out the points on x-axis and on y-axis. So for that we have to put x2 is equal to 0. So when we put x2 is equal to 0, then we will get x1 value. So if we observe in this equation, put x2 is equal to 0, then x1 is equal to minus 10. Because this minus sign we have to transfer to the right hand side. So when we put x1 is equal to 0, then on y-axis we will get x2 is equal to, so here 10 divided by 3. Then we will move next. When we put x2 is equal to 0, x1 is equal to 6 and x2 is equal to 6. Then here when we put x2 is equal to 0, then we get x1 is equal to 2, and when we put x1 is equal to 0, then here minus x2 is equal to 2. So x2 is equal to minus 2. Then x1 is greater than 0 and x2 is greater than 0. Now we will draw here the x-axis and y-axis. Now we have to plot the points. So on this x-axis, if we observe, all the values are for x1. So we have to plot here the values for x1. So on the right hand side we will plot the positive points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and so on. And on the left hand side we have to plot the negative points, that is minus 1, minus 2, minus 3, minus 4, minus 5, minus 6, minus 7, minus 8, minus 9 and minus 10. Now we have to take the equal distance. So you can take here 1 centimeter distance. If space is available, then you can move for the 2 centimeter distance also. But we have to take the equal distance on x-axis as well as y-axis in between each point. Now on y-axis, if we observe all the values for x2, so we have to plot the points for x2. So we will consider here the points, that is in upward direction positive 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and on downward direction we have to consider here negative signs and so on. Now we will move for the next. Now for the first constraint, so this is the negative constraint, so our x1 is minus 10. So I will select this point because this is the values for x1, and x2 is 10 by 3. So when we calculate this 10 by 3, that is 3.33. So here 3.33, that is we will select approximate, this is the point. So you can select 3 centimeter and then next 3 millimeter. Now we have to join these 2 points. So we will draw here one straight line. So this is the straight line. Now we will write the constraint. So which is the constraint? So constraint is this. So originally this is the constraint. So I will write minus x1 plus 3x2 is less than or equal to 10. Now which side that we have to consider? So this is important point. There are two sides, that is, this is the upward side and this is the downward side. Now if we observe for this constraint, if I put x1 is equal to 0, then we get x2 is less than or equal to 10 by 3, that is 3.33. So x2 is, so value of x2 is less than or equal to. So less than value, that is 3.33 is here, and less values are in the downward direction. So I will show here this downward direction, that is limited for y-axis only. Now if I put x2 is equal to 0, then what is the equation? So I will write here. So it will become minus x1 is less than or equal to 10. Now we have to modify this. So we have to modify this as I will multiply here on both sides with minus sign. Then what will be the equation? So x1 is greater than or equal to minus 10. So this less than sign will become or will convert into greater than sign. So we have to consider this condition. So x1 is greater than or equal to minus sign. So if we observe x1, that is minus 10. So this minus 10, value of x1 will be greater than or value of x1 is equal to. So I have to consider greater than values, that means values towards the right hand side, because here is 0. So 0 is greater than minus 10, then 1 is greater than minus 10, and so on. So we have to consider this area. Now we will move to the next constraint. So next constraint is x1 plus x2 is less than or equal to 6. So for this the points are 6 and 6. So for x1 we have to consider this 6 and x2 we have to consider this 6. So we can easily join these 2 points. Now I will write this x1 plus x2. So I will write here x1 plus x2 is less than or equal to 6. Now if I put value of x2 is equal to 0, then x1 will be less than or equal to 6. So on x-axis all the values should be equal to 6 or less than 6. So I will show here arrow towards the left hand side direction. Now when I put value of x1 is equal to 0, then x2 is less than or equal to 6. That is, all the values are less than 6 or is equal to 6. So I will show here arrow in the downward direction. So we have to consider this area, that is in the downward direction we have to consider. So I will show arrow in this direction. Now we will move for the next. So here x1 minus x2 is less than or equal to 2. So here x1 is 2, x2 is minus 2. So here x1 is 2 and x2 is minus 2. That means we have to select these 2 points and we will draw one line. So I will draw here one line. And for this line we will show this x1 minus x2. So we have to write this constraint x1 minus x2 less than or equal to 2. Now for this question, if I put x2 is equal to 0, then it will become x1 is less than 2 or x1 is less than or equal to 2. So all the values less than 2 are on the left hand side. So I will show arrow. And now when I put x1 is equal to 0, then here I will rewrite minus x2 is less than or equal to 2. So we have to modify this. So if I multiply here on both sides with negative sign, then it will become x2 is greater than or equal to minus 2. So x2 value should be greater than or equal to minus 2. So here x2 is equal to minus 2 and all the values greater than minus 2 is in the upward direction. So I will show, that is, we have to refer the area that is in this upward direction. So I will show the arrow in this direction. Now we will highlight the area. The condition is x1 is greater than or equal to 0 and x2 is also greater than or equal to 0. So we will consider the area in the first quadrant only because all the values are positive. So here I will highlight. Now we will select the point. So first point will be point O. So this point, that is coordinates for this point are 0, 0. So we will prepare here one table, that is points and coordinates. Then next point I will write here as a point A. So for this point A, if we observe, on x-axis value is 0 and on y-axis value is 10/3. Then next point will be point B. So for this B, on x-axis value is 2 and on y-axis it is 4. Now next point will be point C. On x-axis it is 4 and 2. Then next point here is the point D, and at this point D on x-axis value is 2 and here this value is 0. So for this point D, 2, 0. So these are the coordinates. Now our question is that we have to minimize Z. So for this we will put the value. So on x-axis we will consider the values for x1 and on y-axis we will consider the values for x2. Now how to calculate the values for Z? So for this Z to the base O, that is at point O, value of ZO is 0, 0, that is 0. Then ZA, so at point A value is x1 is 0 plus 2 into 10/3, that is 20/3. Then ZB, so for this ZB, x1 is 2, that is minus 2 plus 4 into 2, that is 8. So minus 2 plus 8, that is 6. Then ZC, 4, 2, that is minus 4 plus 4, that is 0. Then ZD, so 2, 0, that is minus 2 plus 0, that is minus 2. Now question is that we have to minimize Z. So if we observe, minimum value is at point D, that is minus 2. So where is the point D? So point D is having constraint 2, 0. So this is the optimal solution. Now we will consider the second example. Maximize Z minus x1 plus 4x2 subjected to constraint minus 3x1 plus x2 is less than or equal to 6, x1 plus 2x2 less than or equal to 4, x2 is less than or equal to minus 3. No lower bound constraint for x1. That is, x1 may have negative values. So here no any limitations are mentioned for the values of x1 and x2. First we will prepare the table to find out the points that we have to plot on x-axis and on y-axis. So for that we will write the given constraints. So for this table, first column is for constraint and now is less than sign we will cancel and we will consider only is equal to sign. So this is limited only for this particular table. So I will write the first constraint minus 3x1 plus x2 is equal to 6. Second constraint, x1 plus 2x2 is equal to 4. x2 is equal to minus 3. Now we will move for the next table, the next column, that is how to plot the values on x-axis. For that we have to put x2 is equal to 0. So when we put x2 is equal to 0, then x1 is equal to, we will transfer minus 3 to the right hand side, x1 is minus 2. Now on y-axis we have to put x1 is equal to 0. So here when we put x1 is equal to 0, then x2 is equal to 6. Now in the same way, when we put x2 is equal to 0, then x1 is equal to 4. And when we put x1 is equal to 0, then x2 is equal to 2. Then here value of x1 is equal to 0 and x2 is equal to -3. Now we will plot the graph. So here is the x-axis. So on x-axis we have to put x2 is equal to 0 and all the values for x1. So we have to plot here the values for x1, and on y-axis we have to plot the values for x2. So we have to mention that. Now we will take any particular distance. So as per the space available, you can take 1 centimeter distance or 2 centimeter distance as per the space. So I will take here is the 0. Then on x-axis 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And on y-axis 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here is the negative values -1, -2, -3, -4. Here are also negative values. Now we will plot the points. So for the first constraint, x1 is -2. I will mark. So x1 is -2. So these are the values of x1. So I will point this mark. Then x2 is 6. So here is 6. So we will join these 2 points. So we have to draw here one straight line. So for this straight line, I will write the constraint, that is -3x1 plus x2 is less than or equal to 6. Now there are 2 areas, that is towards the right hand side and left hand side. So which area we have to consider? So when we put x2 is equal to 0, then here this equation will become -3x1. So I will write here -3x1 is less than or equal to 6. So I will write, if I transfer this 3, then -x1 is less than or equal to 2. Now we will modify this. So I will multiply here on both sides with minus sign. So what will become here, this less than sign will convert into greater than sign. So how I can write this? x1 is greater than or equal to -2. So this change is important, that this less than is getting converted into greater than. So x1 is equal to -2, x1 is greater than -2. So if we observe, here is -2. So x1 is equal to -2 and greater than. So all the greater values are towards the right hand side. So we will show arrow. Now in the same way, if I put x1 is equal to 0, then x2 is less than 6. So less than 6, that is the values in the downward direction. So we have to consider this area. Now we will move next. x1 4, x2 2. So here is 4 and 2. So x1 is 4. So this is the 4 and here is 2. So we will join these 2 points. So we have to draw here this straight line. Now I will write x1 plus 2x2. x1 plus 2x2 is less than or equal to 4. So how to decide the area? So for this area, if we consider, if I put x1 is 0, then x2 is less than or equal to 2. So x2 is less than or equal to 2, that means downward side area. And if I put x2 is 0, then x1 is less than 4. So less than 4, that is left hand side area. So we have to show arrow in this direction. Then next, x2 is -3. So here is -3. So here is the -3. So there is no any x1. x1 is 0. So we will just draw here one horizontal line. Now I will write here x2 is less than or equal to -3. So how to decide the area? So if we observe, x2 is equal to -3 or x2 is less than -3. So all the values for x2 are less than this -3. So here in the upward direction all the values are greater than -3 and in downward direction all the values are less than -3. So we will decide this is the area. Now we will highlight the area. If we observe, here is the first line that we have to consider the area that is in the downward direction. For second line we have to consider the area towards the right hand side, and this is the line we have to consider the area in the downward direction. So if I decide to highlight this area, then this is the area that we have to consider. Now we will select the point of intersection. So here is the first point of intersection for these two constraints line, that is point A, and here is the second point B. So I will prepare here one table with points and coordinates. So for point A, which are the coordinates? So first coordinate, that is for this x-axis. So if we observe for this point A, the point on the x-axis is -3 and on y-axis is -3. So I will write -3, -3. Now for this point B, we have to consider the points, that is on the x-axis it is 10 and on y-axis it is -3. So 10, -3. So these are the coordinates. Now we have to maximize z. So we will calculate this. So -x1, that is ZA is equal to -3, that is 3 and plus 4 into -3. So 4 multiplied by 3, that is 12, that is -12. So when we calculate this, then we will get the answer -9. Then for ZB, x is 10, so -10 and here is minus. So I will write here x1 is -10 minus 3 multiplied by 4, that is 12. So if we calculate this -10 minus 12, -10 minus 12, that is equal to -22. Now question is maximize, that is we have to select the maximum value. So which is the maximum value in between -9 and -22? So -9 is maximum value. So what is the optimal solution? Optimal solution is z is equal to -9 with x1. So x1 is -3, x2 is also equal to -3.